Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
So that was an experience of all time. Welcome in everyone to Game Over Toronto following a 5-2 loss for the Leafs at the hands of the Vegas Golden Knights. And yeah, that was certainly not the way you want to go into the trade deadline, eh? But welcome in to Game Over Toronto. My name is Zach Payne. I am your host this evening following a weird game, brutal game, bad game. I know that people, including myself, are going to have a lot of strong reactions to this game, but uh, it's tough, man. I mean, personally, I feel like the Leafs were due for this kind of game. I was afraid of this matchup going in because over the last week and a half, the Leafs hadn't exactly been playing the most inspiring hockey. And, going up against a good Vegas team, everything kind of just hit the fan. Even though the Leafs did play good to start the game, they obviously didn't get the saves, and then the game got out of hand. And then in the second and third period, the wheels sort of came off a little bit. But again, we'll get into all that. So welcome into the program. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto. If you're on a podcasting platform, make sure you follow the podcast. Leave us a review. Just starting off, we got a couple of comments in the chat. Terry M, I believe he must have been commenting during the game. Game over for the Leafs. Call it a night, folks. You're wasting time with this brutal garbage. Game over for the Leafs, down 3-0. Wool was absolute crap. Matthew in the chat saying every Leaf was off. The 6 feet plus all Vegas team made the third line look slow and small. And look, that is certainly true. I will say, we'll start off this first segment here. We'll just recap the game generally, as we normally do, when I host at least. And I gotta say, first period, to start the game, the Leafs actually looked pretty good. They came out, they had a little bit more urgency to their game. They were skating well, they were getting the zone. The problem that they ran into all night is they couldn't get very many high quality chances, but they were outworking Vegas to a certain extent early on. The problem started though. The first Vegas goal. Well, actually, first of all, I'm skipping over the start of the game here. The game starts, the puck drops, and immediately Matthew Knies drops the gloves with Zach Whitecloud. Now, at first glance, I was like, why is Matthew Knies fighting? Why is there a fight off the draw? And I was reminded shortly after that Zach Whitecloud was the Vegas defender that injured Matthew Knies earlier in the season in their first matchup. And so Knies wanted to, get a little bit of payback for that. He did pretty good in the fight. I think it was probably a pretty even fight. Knies had a couple of those short jabs that were doing some damage to Whitecloud, but that's how the game started. So right off the bat, it's like, okay, we got a little bit of energy. And Toronto, they came out skating well. Bobby McMahon early on had a very nice zone entry that led to I believe a Morgan Riley shot from the point that, nothing too dangerous, but just kind of speaks to the way that the Leafs were skating early on. But first sign of trouble is an offensive zone draw. Max Domi wins it back to the point. Jake McCabe ends up with it on the right side of the point, and he goes to take a shot. Shot's blocked. Well, that's unfortunate, but it happens. Puck goes the other way, and McCabe completely loses it. I don't know what on earth happened, but he just completely lost sight of the puck, and Brandon Saad was able to just casually skate to the net and get a backhand attempt off on almost a mini breakaway of sorts. McCabe not able to recover in time, and then Tomas Hertl on the rebound beats Max Domi to the puck. Just like that, it's 1-0. Now, that goal was just unfortunate. I didn't love how Joseph Woll played that one. He was sliding really aggressively, but that goal is squarely on Jake McCabe and Max Domi. McCabe because he completely lost track of the puck. Domi because he wasn't quick enough hustling back. He kind of was gliding through the neutral zone until he realized that the danger was coming. So bad start in transition there. Just not a great play. Matthew in the chat saying Knies increased his contract with that fight. Honestly, I mean, that's what you love to see out of Nyes. You love to see that he's willing to do everything. So I'll give him that. I didn't think it was the best Nyes game. He was a little one of those invisible games, but not like anyone else had anything going on anyway. So he kind of falls into the same group as the rest of the team there. Then, so that's the first goal. Second Vegas goal. This is where I started to go, that's bad, like real bad. So in transition, Barbashev streaking in on, he's got a defender on his left shoulder and kind of forces him away from the net. He doesn't have a direct lane, so he just has to throw a backhand on from just below the hash marks, kind of more on the right side, and the puck just goes through Joseph Woll, kind of that 10 hole, under the armpit there, and it just inexcusable. That's one Woll has to save. And there's really no excuse for it. Joseph Woll has got to make that save, and he didn't. Plain and simple. So just like that, it's 2-0. And after that goal, I had a buddy of mine text that this is what the Leafs would look like if Samsonov was the goalie all year. That one hurt as a Joseph Woll fan, but I think it's fair to say Joseph Woll has had a very brutal week. Sunday in Pittsburgh was his worst start of the season. And then tonight here in Vegas, he gets chased for the first time in his career. I think Sportsnet stats put the exact number of games played, but I believe this was Joseph Woll's 66th career NHL game. And it was the first time that he had ever been pulled. I mean, it was bound to happen eventually in his NHL career, but just a brutal, brutal week for Woll. And we're not even done the first period. We're not even done Joseph Woll's performance. So short while later, the Golden Knights get a power play. Jack Eichel, who, by the way, Eichel was the best player on either team today. Jack Eichel, absolute animal tonight. Jack Eichel, not quite a fadeaway slapper, but was not the most, I don't know. It was a good shot. It wasn't the best shot, if that makes sense. And the worst part is it was clean. There was not really a screen. McCabe is sort of in the way, but not really. Joseph Woll sees it, and Eichel beats him clean from distance. Can't go in. Can't go in. The second and third goals cannot go in. I know it was a pretty good shot, and if Austin Matthews had made that shot on Adin Hill, I don't know if we would blame Adin Hill the same way. The same time, though, you want your goal. You have to have one of those two. Between the Barbashev goal and the Eichel goal, you have got to save one of those two. Both go in. Woll gets yanked. Stolarz comes in. Immediately has to make a couple, or not immediately, but he has to make a couple of big saves. I did actually have Stolarz credited with making probably 5 really good saves in this game. He had the one goal that he gave up to Hanifin I didn't love, but I'm more so mad at the defense on that play. So, yeah, I guess to skip ahead to the second period, it's 3-0 at the break, and it's unfortunate because the way the Leafs were playing, it was like... the way the Leafs were playing, I thought they were the better team in the first period, but they didn't get saves. And as Matthew says, O-Dog said it right, Woll was too deep. Yeah, Woll did not play that Eichel shot correctly. He didn't play the Barbashev. Well, he did play it correctly, he just didn't save it. So those 2 goals, unacceptable. He gets yanked. And then, despite the fact that the Leafs were pretty good in the first, you're down 3-0. And to start the second, it's like, okay, 3-0 is bad. It's bad. But that being said, you should be able to claw back in this game. 3 goals is not an insurmountable deficit. 15 seconds in, was it? 15 seconds in, Morgan Rielly and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, inexcusable on the boards against Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, from his knees, centers it past I kind of everyone. There wasn't really anyone in the slot, but centers it. Noah Hanifin from around the ringette line just snipes on Anthony Stolarz. Again, didn't love that goal for Stolarz, but what are you going to do? It's a pass coming from below the goal line out front, not a ton of time to react, and it's a really good shot top shelf by Hanifin. So, again, I put it a little bit on Stolarz, but I mostly put that goal on Rielly and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who I think Brian Hayes was the one who pointed this out. Had a brutal game, that pairing. They've been playing pretty good so far this, like as they've been together since the Four Nations break, but Absolutely brutal game for them, and they got split up later in the game because of it. So at that point, it's 4-0. And then the pairings get split up, so it becomes Morgan Riley playing with Philip Myers, Simone Benoit with Jake McCabe, which I don't like, and then Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Connor Timmins, which, whatever, it's a fine pairing. And then a little bit further through the second period, there was this was a weird one. So Tanner Pearson, I forget the player who sent it in front, but a Vegas shot goes on, and then Stolarz sprawls to try to cover it, and then Pearson kind of jabs at Stolar's glove, his chest, and his whole body as he sprawls out, and the puck ends up in the net. And at first glance, you're like, oh, I can't believe that went in. And then you look at it again, it's like, oh, that's goalie interference. And Mike Johnson said it on the broadcast. That's goalie interference. This should be a no-brainer challenge for the Leafs. And they did challenge it. And it counted, which, look, I disagree with that call. I fully believe that is goalie interference because you're actively pushing through the goalie's equipment to force the puck into the net, which is goalie interference. You're preventing the goalie from making the save because you're preventing him from covering the puck. That being said, for as much as I disagree with the call, if it was going to happen, if that kind of call is gonna happen, I would prefer it to happen in this game. Because at that point, the game becomes 5-0. Vegas goes to the power play. It is what it is. But I still disagree with it. I'm allowed to disagree with it, but still not be that mad, I think. I think that's fair, because the game was out of hand. The Leafs weren't coming back in this one anyways. So because it didn't impact the final, or the result rather, it did impact the final score, but not the result, I'd rather it happen here than in a more consequential game. Like, if that had happened in a game against Florida, and Florida goes on to win by 1, and by extension wins the division by 2 points, I would be fuming. But, is what it is. Matthew in the chat saying, Stoli needs to keep his pad tight together, and the puck goes nowhere, you can see. Yeah, I don't know. Is what it is. It just is what it is. I should also mention, so this one is 5-0. Later, Austin Matthews, he gets the Leafs on the board. I believe they gave it to him. I don't think it got tipped at all. I should have confirmed that. I think it was Matthews. Yeah, Austin Matthews, he gets his 23rd of the season. It is a power play goal, which was his 100th career power play goal. And it is also in the same building. He scored his 100th career goal, period. So that's a nice little bit of history for Matthews. He seems to score some big milestone goals in that building. Didn't matter in this game, but good for Matthews, and you know what? He deserved it, because when it was 4-0, the Leafs had a penalty kill, and Matthews got a breakaway attempt off pure effort. Pure effort and hustle and skating and speed, and it was a beautiful play by Matthews. He tried to he does this move a lot when he gets a breakaway coming in from the left side, where he skates across the top of the crease to the right side, but he'll pull back to the forehand at the last second and try to go 5-hole. Aiden Hill got the pad down, so unfortunately that one didn't go in, but Matthews gets rewarded later in the game with the power play goal, so good for him on that. So at that point, it's 5-1 going into the third, and then in the third period, new forward lines, Berube kind of got a little bit in the blender, but Nylander and Marner swapped, so Nylander was on the top line with Matthews and Nyes, and then Marner was playing with Tavares and McMahon. Yarncroke got a promotion to the third line. Nick Robertson gets a demotion to the fourth line. Tough game for Robertson, but I do want to shout out, Robertson was hustling all night still. There was a play with like 2 minutes to go in the game where he's maximum effort to beat out an icing. And for what it's worth, I respect the effort and the hustle by Robertson, even though he didn't have that good of a game. So later on, Mitch Marner, he gets a clean steal and snipe. It was a good play by Marner. I think Pietrangelo was the defender back, and he just is able to get the shot off by him before Petro can react, beats Aiden Hill clean, and then a few minutes later, Marner with just phenomenal. He's so good with his skate at kicking the puck up to himself, just kind of dances through everyone, but unfortunately gets tripped up, and he's unable to beat Hill from one knee. If he had stayed, if he didn't get tripped up and was on both feet, maybe he's able to get another goal. But Marner, he's up to, I believe, 77 points on the season, which he's on a 103-point pace. Hopefully he gets to 100 points. He deserves it. I'm wishing the best for him. Should also mention Austin Matthews' point streak got extended. Weirdest point streak ever. He's had a point in every single Leafs game since January 29th, but he has like 3 goals in that stretch. It's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, that's really all there was to this game. And on the whole, I mentioned it earlier, the Leafs just didn't have an ability to get to the middle of the ice in this game. Vegas did a really good job keeping them to the outside, and this is the problem that we see with the Leafs in the playoffs. When they really need to score, the Leafs fail to get to the dangerous areas. They didn't have a ton of high danger chances in this one. Adin Hill gives up 2 goals. He didn't have to work very hard to only give it, like, he had a good game, didn't have to work that hard. So on the whole, there were 2 goals that Woll allowed that I didn't love. There was a goalie interference call that I didn't love. End of the day, those things go against you, and the team obviously wasn't able to overcome it. That being said, given the way the Leafs have been playing over the last week, probably a deserved result. So with that being said, I'm going to transition us into our second segment. As I do, a reminder to hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto if you've been enjoying the show. And again, if you're on a podcast platform, make sure you follow us on there as well. And also, go check out all of the other Game Over Network markets shows. We have a show for every single Canadian market. So from coast to coast, if you're a fan of a Canadian hockey team, make sure you go subscribe to all of the Game Over channels and the Game Over Hub channel as well. And you can also go check out Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Hub channel as well, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, second segment, I want to talk more about the goaltending, but not in the context of this game, more in the context of going forward. Now, rest of the season, make no mistake. Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz, they're splitting starts. Right? I imagine Stolarz will... Actually, Stolarz played 2 periods of this game. Woll might get Saturday night. But regardless, I imagine that they will split starts the rest of the way. But make no mistake, when game 1 of the playoffs hits, Anthony Stolarz is going to be the starter. There is no longer a question. There would have to be some unbelievable run by Joseph Woll and an unbelievable collapse by Anthony Stolarz to change anyone's mind. Stolarz is the starter. Joseph Woll, I love him. And we've seen the flashes in the 2023 playoffs against Florida, in the 2024 playoffs against Boston, where he near single-handedly got the Leafs to Game 7. But he's just not ready. And that's okay. He's played well this season, but he's just not quite ready. And he played valiantly while Stolarz was out of the lineup. He's just not ready. Stolarz has been great all season in the games he's played. And I think Joseph Woll still gives you a chance to win a majority of nights. Against Pittsburgh, really challenged the Leafs' ability to get a win. And tonight, obviously, he really hindered them. I don't think this is going to stick. I don't know what's been going on this week with him, but the worst week of his career in the NHL so far. I expect him to bounce back from this. I also expect Stolarz to be the Game 1 starter and be your starter in the playoffs until either injury or performance changes your mind. And if Woll has to go in the playoffs, I'm still confident in him. But yeah, Stolarz is the starter. And, Matthew saying Stoley's getting the majority of games. I don't on it if we're defining majority as he gets more games than Woll, therefore playing the majority, sure, he might play the majority of games. I don't think the split will be in my opinion, the most extreme difference in the amount of starts they'll get is like 60-40. I think Stolarz might get 60% of the starts for the rest of the season and Woll gets 40%. But my reasoning for why I would want to split them the rest of the way is I want to keep Stoley fresh. Again, like I said, Woll still gives you a chance to win most nights, right? Bad week, you expect him to get over that. I don't want to overuse Stolarz. When it comes to the 3 games against the Panthers and the 1 game remaining against Tampa, yes, Stolarz is starting those most important games for you. But on a game-to-game basis, I don't want to run him into the ground and risk more injury, risk just tiring him out. You have 2 goalies for a reason. That's the way the NHL is trending. Keep them both fresh. But yeah, Stoley probably should start in Colorado. So it's Colorado on Saturday after the deadline. And then who's after that? Then it's Monday against Utah. I would start Wool there. And then you have a couple of days off, and then you have Florida. Stolar starts that one for me. Then you come back Saturday against Ottawa, then Wool starts. Like, you can alternate starts there. If you go Stoli against Colorado and Florida, Wool against Utah and Ottawa, I don't think anyone would complain about that. Obviously, pending the results of those games. But I don't know. That's where my head is at. Stolarz has been so fantastic this season that, and even in this game, he gives up 2 goals, but I don't blame him for either of them too. I give him a little bit of slack. I give him a lot of slack for the goalie interference. I give him a little bit of flack for the Hanifin goal. Is what it is. A goalie's going to give up goals. He was still fantastic in the minutes he played in this game. Like I said, I had 5 or 6 saves that I had noted down as being really good saves from Stolarz that, Wool probably gives up tonight potentially. Or if Wool played that whole game, it might have been 7-2, right? Stolarz kept a few out. His saves above expected was probably positive tonight. Like, goals saved above expected, he probably came out pretty okay in this game. So, look, he has 1 shutout on the season. I don't expect him to get shutouts ever. It's hard to get shutouts in this league. And I don't think Stolarz has been perfect by any means. He's just been really solid. He's been really solid. And the Leafs' defensive structure is, for the most part, good. It's gotten a little bit worse as the season wears on. I expect after the trade deadline for the team to kind of lock back in and figure that out. And especially when Chris Tanev comes back, that'll be a big help. But yeah, I think Stolarz has it's been very symbiotic between the defense and Stolarz when he's been in net for the most part. And Stolarz does give you the best chance to win. So as Matthew says, if you trust Wool, play Stoli for all the chance to get top of the Atlantic right now. Well, you play Stoli in all of the big games the rest of the way to get top of the Atlantic. And as we'll talk about in a second, getting top in the Atlantic is of the utmost importance the rest of the way. If we're looking rest of the season, you got to get there. You have got to win this division because, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. So, actually, you know what? We'll talk about it right now. With that being said, we'll get into the third segment. And, before I do, just a reminder that if you want to support the Game Over Network, you can subscribe to us on Patreon. We have a free tier. We also have paid tiers if you feel like financially supporting a network of young broadcasters in that are trying to bring something different to the hockey community. Or you can go check out our merch on the GameOverNetwork.com. We have merch for, again, all of the Canadian markets. And if you're a Toronto fan, Calgary fan, Ottawa fan, Edmonton fan, doesn't matter. There is something for you. So again, that's at the GameOverNetwork.com. You can go check out our merch. Now, we got to talk. Because in the last couple of days, there have been the trade deadline is obviously Friday, and some teams like to get a jump start on that. Now, we're going to talk about another deal that happened that was weird, but the 2 main trades we have to talk about involve the Leafs' biggest competitors right now, biggest rivals right now. So the Florida Panthers, first things first, Seth Jones gets traded to the Florida Panthers. I think the Blackhawks are retaining $2.5 million on the rest of that deal, which is huge for them. Or for the Panthers. Panthers send back goaltender Spencer Knight, who, very good goaltending prospect, should be a good goalie for Chicago. He had a fantastic start in his first outing with the Blackhawks. I believe that was against LA, and a first-round pick. That immediately makes the Panthers D-core a lot better. Now so the top pair is probably still Forsling Ekblad, and then the second pair is probably Mikola Jones. That's nasty. And Jones gives them a little bit more offense from the back end. I view him more as like a Montour replacement with a little bit more physical edge, maybe a pinch worse defensively. But look, Jones has been a minute eater on a terrible Chicago team for years. And he has flaws. There's the whole thing about teams targeting him on zone entries because his agility isn't very good and he likes to sag off the blue line a bit more. But Seth Jones is really, really, really freaking good. So that's a problem. And that top four for the Panthers is going to be very difficult to deal with. Then, so this morning, I wake up and I'm like, today would be a great day for the Leafs to trade for Yanni Gourde. And naturally, I look at my phone and Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand are heading to the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and forward Mikey Eyssimont. Kill me. Dude. Oh my Lord, I was so mad. I was so mad. And look, is it an overpay? Probably. That's an overpay. I mean, Bjorkstrand is signed through next year. He's a very good forward. He's going to be very good. That second line right wing spot for the Lightning. Not looking forward to dealing with him in the playoffs if the Leafs have to. Yanni Gourde, he'll probably be the third line center. I don't know. Between him and Nick Paul, you'll figure it out, the third line for Tampa. I hate that because the thing about Tampa for most of the year is they have been one of the most egregious one-line teams in the league. The top line for Tampa, like their big players, so Kucherov, Point, Hagel, they account for a higher percentage of their team's goals than anyone. And now Tampa just addressed their depth in a major way. And maybe they're not done. I don't know, even if that is what they do, and that's their only deadline move. That instantly, to me, makes them the favorites in the East. In a season where there's not really a clear cup contender or a clear-cut favorite in the East, I know Washington's had a good regular season. Washington also has the highest team shooting percentage of the Cap era, so that's not sustainable. So I kind of have them pegged as a disappointment candidate for the playoffs. There's a very high likelihood that for the 6th straight year, the Cup finalist comes out of the state of Florida. So that's not ideal. Then I'll briefly mention this other trade that happened during the game. The Pittsburgh Penguins trade Michael Bunting to the Nashville Predators for Luke Schenn, and who else did they get? It was Luke Schenn and someone. I should probably have checked this beforehand. Forgive me. Oh, where did this go, man? Hold on. I have to find the trade now. I lost it. Luke Schenn and Tommy Novak. Now, why on earth the Penguins are doing this, I don't know. The Predators trading Luke Schenn and Tommy Novak, sure, that makes sense. For Michael Bunting, maybe less sense, but I mean, Bunting is a good middle six winger. You know, he could be a really good third liner for Nashville. I fully expect Pittsburgh to flip Schenn, probably Novak too. It would not make sense for the Penguins to hold on to Schenn. So I don't know if Schen's going to be a Leaf. I would like it if Luke Schenn was a Leaf. But Matthew's saying Robertson to the Penguins for Schenn. I wouldn't do that. I know Robertson had a tough game against San Jose, tough game tonight. I would like to hold on to Robertson unless you are trading him for a forward upgrade. If you're looking at the Islanders and you're trying to trade for Brock Nelson and they want Robertson in that deal, sure, do it. But if not, I'm perfectly content to hold on to him. Robertson can be your 13th forward, so if and when there's an injury in the playoffs, Robertson can draw in and give you some scoring punch on the third line as long as you insulate him with defensively responsible line mates. And then next year he's going to be cheap and he could possibly score 20 goals. He's effective scoring depth, and he's been improving defensively, and he's been improving on the forecheck. I would like to hold on to that player, again, unless it's for a clear forward upgrade. Now, with those trades, the Leafs are squarely the third best team in the Atlantic at this point, and we still don't know what they're going to do at the deadline. There have been rumors, obviously, about Braden Shen. Darren Dreger said that it might cost, well, sorry. Dreger speculated that it might cost all of Minton, Danforth, Cowan, and possibly more, and that might not even be enough. That is ridiculous, and I want to caution anyone against listening to that too intensely, because Darren Dreger is obviously, like, the Blues are talking through him, right? Darren Dreger is known, and some of these insiders are just known to carry water for the people who feed them information. It will not cost all of the Leafs' best prospects and a first-round pick to get Braden Shen, all right? But the Leafs might not be willing to meet it. Like, it would probably cost a first and one of those guys, and you have to ship Max Domi out the other way to make the salary work. The Leafs might not be willing to do that. That's fine. Braden Shen, I don't view him that highly, but the overarching theme right now, we have no idea what the Leafs are going to do, and it might be nothing. And Brad Treliving, the ball is in your court. So the Leafs have been linked to Braden Shen, to Brock Nelson. They were linked to Yanni Gourde, but then as soon as he was traded to the Lightning, some of the insiders were saying that wasn't realistic. The Leafs weren't serious about that. It kind of seems like Yanni Gourde was the Leafs' break glass in case of emergency option, and now he's gone. So Braden Shen, Brock Nelson, Scott Laughton, those are the three names that we most commonly hear associated with the Leafs. Brock Nelson's a very good player. Braden Shen is a fine player on a horrifying contract. Scott Laughton is a fine player, not a center, and not worth a first-round pick. But what are you going to do? So now the Leafs, this is squarely on management. They have gotten themselves into a situation where they are too scared to make a big addition and to part with their prospects and picks, and that is squarely on Brendan Shanahan, because Brad Treliving has only been here for so long, and it's not like Craig Berube is making the trades. It's Brendan Shanahan. Brendan Shanahan is terrified to make trades because he is so scared of repeating the Kadri trade, repeating the Nick Foligno trade that didn't work out, right? Where they trade a first and a fourth for Foligno, and he gets hurt, and he's not effective. He's a bad fourth liner for them. Shit happens, right? They emotionally trade Nazem Kadri, and that trade is a disaster. And those moves have scared Brendan Shanahan from approving anything. But at the same time, Brendan Shanahan also has got to win at least a playoff round to keep his job. Keith Pelly, who is the CEO of MLSE, I believe, he's Brendan Shanahan's boss. And if the Leafs lose in the first round again, all onus will be on Shanahan. You have fired 3 general managers at this point. You have fired multiple head coaches at this point with this core. At what point is Shanahan's job the one that goes next? So he is in a tricky spot where he has to go all in on this year because the Leafs have a chance to win the Atlantic, something they haven't done since like the 90s. I know they won the Canadian division, not the same, and they choked that anyways. The difference between playing Florida, Tampa Bay, or Detroit, Columbus, Ottawa, whomever, massive difference. And granted, I don't want to play the Rangers, but the Leafs have to do something. They have to. You cannot just sit on your hands and do nothing, because if you do, you are conceding that you don't believe in this team this year, that you are punting on your best opportunity to win the division, and that you're conceding that Florida and Tampa are better than you. And if that happens, we're going to hear, the division is really tough. And, we really believed in this team regardless. We thought we had the right guys at the back. No, it's BS. Don't listen to it. Don't let the Leafs gaslight you. If they do not make a move this deadline, and a meaningful move, I mean, like if you trade for a 7th defenseman, I don't care. If the Leafs do not make a serious move, that is a complete failure of management. If Brendan Shanahan, Brad Treliving, and everyone else in the front office fail to make a move to keep them competitive with Florida and Tampa Bay, that is a failure of management. Austin Matthews came out today and he said, when you see other teams adding, you want to see an ad. Julian Brisebois, the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, after trading 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, 3 premium draft picks for Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, you know what he said? It's better to try and fail than it is to do nothing. I'm paraphrasing, but his point is you will regret it less if you try and fail than if you don't try at all. So if the Leafs, let's say they don't do anything meaningful, they go into the first round, they lose the division to Florida, they play Tampa Bay in the first round, and they lose that series. That will be a more regrettable action than if they make a meaningful, let's say they trade for Brayden Schenn, they pony up for him, and they lose in the first round anyways. At least you tried. At least you gave an ounce of caring, an ounce of belief in this team. If you do, I will scream it from the rooftops. You have to try. And if you want to sit here and say that the right trades weren't available, that is also a failure of management. Look, if you're like, this is a team that had a fake general manager search. We knew the entire time Brad Treliving was the only guy they were seriously considering for GM. They had a fake head coaching search. We knew before before the playoffs, we knew Craig Berube would be the next coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs if the Leafs lost in the first round, which they did. So a team that had a fake general manager search and a fake head coaching search, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that they have had a completely fake evaluation process of the trade deadline options, and they have only been focusing on Brayden Schenn. What have we heard the entire time? Brayden Schenn's their top option. Brayden Schenn's the top option. Brayden Schenn's the top option. Yeah, they're linked to these other guys. They're linked to Mikko Rantanen. They're linked to Brock Nelson. They're linked to Scott Laughton. Those have never been their top options. They want Brayden Schenn. And the Blues are gaslighting everyone into thinking he's this premium asset. So now the Leafs are in a position where you're either going to pony up for him or you're not. And if you don't, you're probably going to end up with nothing. Seems like Brock Nelson is either getting extended by the Islanders or getting traded to Winnipeg. Good for the Jets. He's a very good player. He'll fit in well there. Scott Laughton, they want a first-round pick for him. That's not what Scott Laughton's worth, but someone will probably pony up for him. So what? If you don't get Schenn, what? Now, if I'm sitting back here, there's 2 options. One, the less preferable option to me, is you go to Philadelphia and you try to get a D and a forward from them. Now, that would likely be Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen. Ristolainen is the antithesis of an analytics darling. He has been the just laughing stock of the analytics community for years, but he has gotten better in Philadelphia. I think he can be a solid 4th defenseman. He's also on a terrible contract, so you have to get retention. Laughton is not a center, as I said, and you have to ship out Domi to make the money work, so then you're left with either Laughton or Jarnkrok playing center, which is not ideal. Or, what I would do, the Seattle Kraken have indicated that Jared McCann could be available. The New York Islanders, if they do become sellers and sell Brock Nelson, they might be inclined to sell someone else. I would want, of the options that are out there, my top 2 targets right now, if he's available, Jared McCann. If he's not, Jean-Gabriel Pageau from the Islanders. Those are legitimately good third-line centers that are good at both ends of the ice, and you can seriously win with them. And if Tavares gets hurt or Matthews gets hurt, both of those guys can be competent top 6 centers. I would also pair that with a defense. I'm a big fan of Connor Murphy in Chicago. He doesn't defend the line that well, but he's big, physical, good in front of the net, good at stopping a cycle. He can pair well with Morgan Riley. That's what I would do. One of McCann or Pageau and Connor Murphy. Make the money work. Trade Domi, trade Dewar, waive Reeves. I don't care. Make it work. That being said, the Leafs are not going to do that because that would require getting a little creative with the cap, and also it would require Brad Treliving admitting he made a mistake with Max Domi, which he'll never do. He'll never do because general managers, especially Brad Treliving, very stubborn. And Brad Treliving is also notorious for not being active at the trade deadline. For years in Calgary, he would sit on his hands. That might be Calgary's upper management too. It's very possible. But he didn't do anything for them. Last year at the deadline, what did he do? He traded for Lyubushkin. Okay. Like, it was all depth guys. It was all depth guys. So, Look, I think that this team can win the division, especially when Chris Tanev comes back and the defense figures itself out. I also think this is the most vulnerable the East has been in years. If there was ever a year for the Leafs to do damage in the playoffs, it would be this year, which is perfect because this is also the year they absolutely have to do damage in the playoffs. Anything short of a conference finals appearance will be viewed as a failure. And if you lose in the first round again, Mitch Marner is walking for nothing. So, what are you going to do? Ball's in your court, Brad. With that being said, I'm going to turn this over to the fourth segment. Excuse me. This is the point of the show where we welcome questions. So if you have any trade deadline thoughts for the Leafs, this is the time to send them in. Or if you are, thinking about the other trades that have happened, any questions about the Leafs at all or about hockey in general, this is the time to throw them down in the chat. I want to shout out Matthew for being super active in the chat. And again, reminder to hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto. And so with that rant being over with, Matthew says, Robertson, Domi, and a second for Lawton. Minton between McMahon and Lawton. I appreciate your confidence in Fraser Minton. I don't think he's ready this year for that. I think if you hold on to Minton, I think there's a chance he could be your third line center next year. Again, I already talked about my desire to keep Robertson. I'm trying to think of scenarios where they acquire Lawton. Like, okay. If you trade Dewar and waive Reeves, that'll free up about $2.4 million in cap room. You can trade for Lawton at 33% retained, so he comes in at $2 million. In that scenario, you might have Lawton on the left, Domi in the middle, Yarncroke on the right, which I don't love Domi as a center. However, if you're going to use Domi as a center, you have got to insulate him with good defensive wingers. Yarncroke is that. Lawton is, he's that. And they're good checkers. That'd be a good forechecking line. Domi's good in transition. There's a world where that works, or you move Lawton to the second line. You keep McMahon on the third line so that you have more speed in transition. I don't know. But I do know that I would not be confident in Lawton being at center. That's the thing. Is that he's played it a bit in Philly this year. He's mostly been a winger. If you're relying on Lawton to be your third line center, it's risky. So, I don't know. I'm just going to check real quick. Again, if you have any questions about the Leafs or any thoughts, comments about the trade deadline, this is the time to get them in. I'm just checking Twitter because I want to see if anything has come up here. All the Leafs captains spoke of a need to be better. Marner said it was a wake-up call. Good, honestly, but whatever. I don't care. I don't care, man. I mean, show it. Prove it. I will say, this is... I tweeted this out, but for a team that is tied for first in the division and that is, I don't know. The vibes are about as bad as they can be in Leafland right now, where The Leafs are coming off a big loss to Vegas and an embarrassing loss to San Jose. Your two biggest rivals have just made huge trades to improve their rosters, and the Leafs have yet to do anything. Vibes are bad. Vibes are bad. When Tanev is back, do you think Myers can be tried with Riley again? I think he will be tried. I don't love it. I think the biggest thing is you have to get a defense partner for Morgan Riley. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, bless his heart, he's a third pairing defenseman. He's had a legitimately good run in 2025. I want him on the third pair though. I think your ideal defense pairs are McCabe Tanev is your shutdown pair, Riley blank is your second pair, and you hope Morgan Riley can rediscover his offense in the playoffs. And then third pair, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and who cares? Probably Simone Benoit, which will make me claw my eyes out, but it's Benoit or Myers. I think Myers has been passable for what he is, considering I don't have expectations for him. He's been passable. That being said, if he is in your top four when the playoffs start, oh boy, I am terrified because he's a 6'7". But Benoit, Timmins, and Myers are all 6'7" defensemen. They are guys that probably shouldn't be in the lineup every night. They are guys that should not be high in the lineup at all. They are third pairing guys that don't drive the third pair. Luckily, Oliver Ekman-Larsson can drive the third pair very effectively too. So, if you have Myers, Oliver Ekman-Larsson as your third pair in the playoffs, totally fine. Totally fine. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. This game is a true indication of the team. I mean, I would say it is absolutely a true representation of the way the team has performed when it counts in previous years, in that they haven't gotten the saves in game sevens. They haven't gotten to the dangerous areas in game sevens. So, well, we just have to see if Sheldon Keefe for years knew what the problem was with this team. He knew what the problem was, but he could never get the message through. You knew that he knew, like there was the infamous Amazon documentary clip where the Leafs are riding high, they're first in the division, and he brings all the captains in. Guys, we're not scoring enough playoff style goals. And Joe Thornton, bane of my existence, says, get off our back, we're in first. Playoffs roll around. What happens? They don't score enough playoff style goals. 2022 happens, and yeah, the Leafs, 2022 is probably the Leafs' best chance to go on a deep run. They ran into the dynasty Tampa Bay Lightning, and in Game 7, when it counted, they couldn't get to the dangerous areas, and the Lightning shut it down. 2023, the Leafs black out their shooting percentage. They actually don't play very well. They get outplayed all series, but just they go to the net. They're menaces in front of the net, in front of Vasilevsky, and Vasilevsky turns into a pumpkin, and the Leafs win a series. You go against Florida. You can't get to the dangerous areas. Bobrovsky has a pretty good series, and you don't score goals when it counts. 2024 against Boston. You don't get to the middle of the ice. You don't challenge them enough. You don't challenge Swayman enough. You don't score goals when it counts. They're in the last 14 playoff games, and I'm going to hammer this point until they change the narrative. The last 14 playoff games, they have scored more than 2 goals once. Once. And the one time they did, they scored 3. They have scored 2 goals or fewer 13 out of 14 games, and the only time they didn't, they scored 3. And they somehow went 7 against Boston. They somehow won a game against Florida, and they somehow finished off the series against Tampa. Don't know how they've done it, but they've done it. So I have no doubt that the Leafs are able to play defense in the playoffs. I do have doubt whether they can score. That's like, so we talk about a defense edition. I don't think defense, if you're going to make a marquee defense edition, it has to be a puck mover. If you don't, then get someone physical, play with Morgan Riley. Give OEL a chance to shine on the third pair. They will not win 4-0 in a series. You mean in a game, or in they won't sweep a series? Because I don't think they will sweep a series either. And they're capable. Any team is capable of winning 4-0 on a given night. In game 1 in 2022, they beat Tampa 5-0. They're capable of doing it. It's just not consistent. So badly, no matter who they play in the first round, game 1, just come out and score 5 goals and win, because the Leafs suck in game 1s. They have a horrible record in game 1s in the Matthews era. I think they're what? So they lost against Washington. They lost 2018 against Boston. They won 2019, so 1-2. They lost 2020 against Columbus. They lost 2021 against Montreal, so 1-4 at that point. They won 22, so 2-4, 2-5, they're 2-6 in game 1s in the Matthews era. Horrible. So when we get there, I need the Leafs to shut everyone up. I need Mitch Marner to score goals. I need Auston Matthews to score goals. And I need the Leafs to score more than 3 goals and win game 1. That will be the biggest thing on my agenda. I don't know. What do you guys think? There's 8 people in here right now. What are your thoughts on, what's your confidence level in the Leafs going into the playoffs? And also make sure you hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto while you guys are here. Because if the playoffs started today, and Toronto, let's say they win the division, and they're going up against Columbus in round 1. You better win that series. You better win that series. I wouldn't necessarily be confident based on, history. Know your history or be doomed to repeat it, right? And given what happened against Montreal in 2021, I am scarred. There is no matchup I will feel confident in. Matthew's saying 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 confidence. And I would love to hear your rationale for that. So I'm going to give you this scenario. If the Leafs are playing Tampa Bay in the first round, let's say that's the matchup, why are you that confident? Okay, so please Ottawa. So is that an 8 out of 10 if they win the division and you're playing one of the wildcard teams, or is that an 8 out of 10 period? I think that's a very clear distinction, because playing Florida or Tampa Bay is also a significant blow to my confidence in this team. Because I think Florida is terrifying. They're the only team, well, Columbus technically did it, but they're the only team to win a quick series against the Leafs is Florida. So and I guess that's another question for you guys. Who do you want in the first round? Let's say the Leafs win the division and you're playing a wild card team. Who do you want to play? Who do you not want to play? I know you probably don't want to play Florida, but of the wild card teams, you probably don't want to play the Rangers, maybe. I don't know. 10 out of 10 versus Tampa Bay. I respect and you know what? The Leafs have had Tampa's number over the years, and Vasilevsky turns into a pumpkin against them. You're bold, Matthew. You're bold. You know what? I'd love to hear why. Why are you so confident in this team in the playoffs? Because I can get behind being confident against Tampa. I can get behind being confident against Columbus, Detroit, Ottawa, New York, whoever the wildcard team is. I don't know if I could get to 8 out of 10 confidence that they'll go on a deep run. I don't know, man. The thing is, I have a 10 out of 10 confidence that if they lose, it'll be in 7 games, because that's what they always do. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about their ability to score when it matters, to get to the middle of the ice. I do really like the way that they forecheck. I like the way that they've been getting to the net more often. But in a game like this against Vegas, where Vegas says you can have the outside, I didn't see the urgency to get to the middle. So I'd love to know your rationale. I'm just curious. So 8 out of 10 for the first. Okay, yeah. But I guess what aspect of this team are you most confident in to give you that confidence? Is it goaltending? Is it defense? Do you think they're going to be able to score? What is the reasoning for your confidence? And again, everyone else that's tuning in right now, who do you want to play? I think if I had to look, I'd probably want to play Detroit. I think that's the team I want. Because although, actually, here's another theory. And also, by the way, I'm going to quickly mention, so Jack Hughes is out for the season. Devils might become sellers. Kovacevic, that's my defense edition. Give me Kovacevic. But there's a scenario where the Jackets actually take over third in the Metro and the Devils drop. And how funny, how just storyline driven would a Devils Leafs first round be? Sheldon Keefe versus Toronto in the playoffs. How funny would that be? Especially if that series goes 7. I know that would be horrifying if the Devils sans Jack Hughes forced a 7-game series out of the Leafs. That would be cinema. It would be cinema because it's the whole like Marner versus Matthews in that gold medal or championship Four Nations game. It's like, well, one of them has to win. Sheldon Keefe versus the Leafs in the game 7. One of them has to win. Goaltending first, depth of possible scoring second, better D than when they actually won in the first round. Yeah, the way they play defense and, presuming they add another guy, it'll be the best defense core they've had going into the playoffs. I think McCabe Tanev is a legitimately spectacular shutdown pair, and I'd feel really good about that. We'll see about depth scoring. I might challenge you on that one. No, Jack Hughes makes a better idea since he's out for this season. Yeah, like if the Leafs lost to the Devils without Jack Hughes in the first round, unforgivable. But I mean, a lot of things have to happen for that matchup to take place. So right now, the Leafs and Panthers are tied. The Atlantic, I firmly believe, the Atlantic will come down to the 3 games the Leafs and Panthers have against each other. If the Leafs can go 2-1 or 3-0 in those games, I think they win. If the Panthers go 2-1 or 3-0 in those games, I think they win the division. I think the Leafs have 1 game against Tampa. I think the Panthers have 1 game against Tampa. And it's the last game of the season, so it might come down to that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see. It is worth noting the Leafs have the tiebreaker over the Panthers because they have more regulation and overtime wins. So that's worth noting. But, okay. So the wildcard teams right now, the teams that are... So Devils... possible teams that the Leafs could play. Let's say the Devils drop out to the wildcard with Jack Hughes over the season. Columbus, the Rangers, Detroit, Ottawa, Montreal... Boston, that's probably my cutoff. I don't think the Islanders make it. Boston probably doesn't either, but I'll mention them. So, of those teams, I want to see the Rangers the least because they have the best goalie, and the Rangers for years have just won playoff series off voodoo magic and off of high shooting percentages and high save percentages. The Rangers are horrifying to look at analytics wise, and they win anyways. It makes no sense to, at the analytics community, but they just do it. So Rangers are who I don't want to play. I don't want to play Ottawa because they have just had the Leafs number over the last number of years. Montreal, you probably want to play Montreal, let's be real. You want to play Detroit. I think Detroit with Lucas Raymond, super sick. Dylan Larkin, super sick. They also have Cam Talbot as their starting goalie. So I'm not... Would you prefer Detroit or Ottawa? Detroit. I think... the Rangers are going to miss. Hey, if the Rangers miss, then all the better. I think Detroit is... Because here's the thing. Ottawa, they have goaltending. They play a good defensive structure. They have the Leafs number. Brady Tkachuk, I am terrified of. And I don't know. I just think Detroit has worse defense and worse goaltending. So for that reason, I'd pick Detroit. Even if Detroit's a bit better offensively. I don't know. But so for everyone that's tuning in right now, last chance to get your questions in before I close out the stream. Make sure you like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto. Thank you all for the support. We've been gaining new subscribers a lot over the last week, and I know that some of you are rediscovering us and rediscovering that Game Over is a thing. So for those of you that have found us again, welcome back, welcome in. But that is going to be where we wrap the show, I think. So thank you so much for joining me. We actually got a lot of conversation out after a bad loss to Vegas. So the next time we see you guys, I think it'll be I think Dominic and Lauren are coming back on Saturday. I'll be back next Monday for the Utah game. But the next time that you tune into Game Over, the trade deadline will have passed. We will know the moves that the Leafs have made. And if the Leafs don't make any moves, I am going to be mad on Monday, and you can tune in for another rant. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Zach Payne. You can find me on Twitter and Bluesky at ZachPayne41, on YouTube at ZachPayne41 if you fancy some football content. And yeah, that's going to be it. If make sure you follow Game Over on all social media platforms as well. Trade for Parayko or not, the Blues won't trade him. Unfortunately, the Blues won't trade him. And that contract is a little tough too. So, all right. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Again, hit like and subscribe, and cheers. Have a good night.